I started writing, channeling like poetry. And I put together a whole book worth of poetry. And then I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And I said, by the way, who is it that's been talking to me? I don't know why I waited that long, but I waited till the end. And I could see Edgar Allan Poe sitting behind a desk. And I'm looking at him and saying, he goes, oh, you finally found me. He goes, you were my wife, Virginia. And I'm like, oh my God.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And yes, you've heard it here before. I still haven't grown old of this very notion of coming down to the Christmas tree on Christmas Day and look at the amazing, incredible universe has brought to me this incredible being. I want to welcome to the podcast today, Jessica Arael Marrocco, part of the Advanced Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, the 6th Division. And I'm just very excited to have you here today and sharing with the audience your incredible mastery and insight into all things high consciousness. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you for inviting me to be on your show today.
It's exciting. I love sharing space with amazing beings that have insight into this nature of true source information. And, you know, you cultivate yourself into this fine-tuning fork, and you get the result that you share, I share with the world. And it's more important for me to add to the collective, conscious collective of having conversations with people like yourself, where people walk away with an epiphany. They go, holy moly, they said that one thing that blew my mind, that brought my attention to all these other things. So what I'd love you to do is just share with the audience just an abbreviation, just a little bit about yourself leading up to this very moment.
Okay, so starting at a very young age, I was a seer. I would just close my eyes, have visions, see faces, see places, see myself traveling. It got to be annoying. I didn't know what it was. Of course, when you're younger, you're like, who are these people? Why are they looking at me? Sometimes they're even hostile, aggressive. And, I started to see things. I wrote this book, The Seer, Violets in the Grass. And in that book, I talk about how I was, when I was young, and actually was seeing through interdimensional space, and would actually see things in the air, and I'd start reaching for things or whatever. And I'd say, you see this? And I'd say, that's my friends and in the neighborhood. And they'd be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I did convince them one time. I saw an orb. We saw an orb going through a field and they could see it too. And I said, we should tell the teacher. And they said, I don't think they'll believe us. And I said, you're right, they won't. I said, so it was one of those things where you start to, I was seeing things. I learned very young to not talk about it because I didn't want to sound weird. I wanted to blend in with everyone. And I've had those moments where I would go off and I'd be in this, like, kind of, in two different worlds. So, I'm having this experience, but, I'm kind of interrelating with everyone else. And while I'm going through this experience, there were times where people say you kind of spaced out a little bit there. What's going on? And I wouldn't say anything. So they thought, oh, we like her. She's a little, kind of odd. She does that stuff, but she's all right. And it wasn't like I never got profiled as someone that had any problems. I did well in school. I did well socially. I was able to balance that. People, they weren't really sure. They knew I was bright, but they couldn't figure it out, because sometimes it seems like I was, a little floaty, you know what I mean? Like not really there. And I used to say, I don't need to do drugs or anything like that. I'm automatically a little in between space. Some people do drugs to kind of go off, and I could easily do that and start like tuning into some kind of vision or something. Happened naturally. So I stayed away from anything that was artificial or any kind of drugs because I felt like it was too intense for me, like marijuana or something like that. I just strayed from. meditation was really amazing. I can go on a little journey, and as I got older, it took me a while. It wasn't until after I had my son, like I was in my 30s, that I started having visions, like really full out visions, and the akashic records opened up. I was walking down the street. I had just gone through a divorce, and I was under a lot of stress and turmoil about what I want to do with my life. And it was like I'm walking down the street, and this like screen opened up in front of my eyes, and I'm like, what is going on? And I saw a past life of myself getting murdered. So now I start crying, right? Broad daylight, walking downtown near my home, because I had lived away when I was married, lived in Nebraska in the Midwest. And when I came back home, I was thinking that I think I'm going crazy. What's going on here? Why am I seeing this? And then I realized later, I did some research that it was the Akashic records. So a few years later after that, I ended up having my son from another, like a childhood, like someone that I dated from high school. I went back to him after I returned home. And then here I am with, I have this son and going through all these experiences, working really hard, trying to bring some money in, that kind of thing. And then I said, I'm really stressed. And I saw this meditation class. I said, that's what I need. I need to learn how to just relax and meditate or do yoga or something like that. Just chill out a little bit, right? So I go into this meditation class, and it's also a mediumship class. And then before you know it, we're going through all of these different practices of mediumship and psychic ability. And I'm telling people all these different things, like, yeah, you're right. And I found that I could, share information with all the different people. And before I knew it, I was doing Akashic readings for people. I did it for free for about half a year. I'd say, come on over. And I couldn't get them to leave. Like, they would be talking to me and asking me, well, yeah, but then why did my school teacher do this? And why, they start going back in time. And before you know, it's hours. And I'm like, I got to get them out of my house. But they would just come over and they would give me a gift or something like that, just to get information for something that they were trying to figure out. Some of them became clients that I ended up having. They started paying me after that time period. I took some courses, learned how to do regressions, because when I started doing Akashic record readings, people were saying, oh, you see my life or my previous lives. I want to see them too. And I said, all right, so why don't I couple this together so you can be able to see your past life as well? And some interesting things came up. I mean, there are people that found, a romantic partner that they recognized from their regressions, or, all different kinds of things, or found that they were in military, in wars. I had a client come in, he was in like just all like the primary battles throughout history, and, traumatized by some of that stuff. So, you were able to find out that you were able to help people with all these different things. And I thought, well, maybe there's a purpose to this crazy, like, visions and things that I see all of the time. And then eventually I ended up decided that I was going to do radio, but I had this really weird encounter with Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe showed up. He didn't show up to me right away. I started writing, channeling like poetry. And I put together a whole book worth of poetry. And then I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And I said, by the way, who is it that's been talking to me? I don't know why I waited that long, but I waited till the end. And I could see Edgar Allan Poe sitting behind a desk. And I'm looking at him and saying, he goes, oh, you finally found me. He goes, you were my wife, Virginia. And I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm finding out that I was his wife. And then I told someone my experience of what I'd seen, and I could describe. He had like a bookshelf behind him and everything. And then I go to visit this woman who was over like a historical society in Rhode Island at Brown University. She says, oh, the university is haunted, or at least the library is, the Athenaeum, they called it. So I go to the Athenaeum, and she meets me there we walk around, we're looking. I said, "Oh, look at that desk." I said, "That looks exactly like where he talked to me from." Right? They had seen his ghost in there. So we walked, because we have to kind of go up the stairs. And I sat in the desk, and I turned to my right because they had all the books to the right, to the left, and then behind me. And to the right was all these books at Morocco. And I looked, and I'm like, why are there so many books named Morocco? And then one of them actually almost spelt my name with an A, because typically Morocco is spelled with an O, right? So I said, well, he was definitely here, and I communicated with him since then. I ended up moving into a home, and we found a book called no, I found like a record, like an LP, hidden in like one of those, like it was like an old house, and it was Dance Macabre. So I wrote the book prior to that, Macabre Short Stories and Poems from the Other Side. I said, so you're here too. So then I used to see him in that house. I started doing radio and talking about Edgar Allan Poe. And then that radio station, which was called the Illuminati Network, they were up for a little while, and then they shut down. I went over to Wolf Spirit Radio and started doing shows there, and also a paranormal show that I did with some other friends, and we started doing ghost hunting. And so we had fun with that. It got a little crazy. Some people got hurt because they were screwing around with ghosts. You don't do that. But got a little dangerous. And then there were people that were skeptical, and you know how it goes. It goes back and forth. But that was another aspect of what I was doing. And then before I know it, I'm a Wolf Spirit Radio. I go to New York City. I meet these two sisters. We start talking. One of them wanted to do a regression. We do a regression. She starts channeling information. While she's doing that, I'm having a conversation with this other one that's there, this other guy who turns out to be Andronicus, who was connected to that book, this book right here, the Andronicus Transmissions. And I do, like, I don't know, from 2015 to about 2018 or 2019, I channeled weekly communication from him and others. And all of it's recorded on my YouTube channel. And it was quite a journey. And then during that time, I met Peter the Insider. And then Peter the Insider from the ACIO explained to me how the ACIO had information about me. And I started bringing Peter in, and we were doing shows together. And that's when he started to share information. It got really intense, where things started happening in the world, where we have all this weird stuff going on with our governments, and the lockdown. He knew about the lockdown before it happened, and just trying to bring his information forward, because he had that challenge with his language. He's originally Slovakian. And so that's been quite a journey. We've been documenting his information. So it went from one thing to another to another. It was almost like it kind of like navigated. I was in a certain type of flow, and trying to stay grounded, and trying to be in a place of meditation, be having an awareness, and wonder, especially stepping into new horizons, the new areas that I didn't know what was going to happen. Just like with the ACIO, because a lot of that's government, a lot of that's military, super soldiers, some of these things that I was affiliated with, but didn't fully have a lot of knowledge, and I didn't have military background. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but I let Peter take the lead, and then we, gathered the information, made sure there was an explanation of what he was talking about. And so here I am talking to you right now. And so bit of a whirlwind, yeah. Well, you asked me to give you a short overview.
I'm blown away, because it's like so interesting. Part of the Tao Te Ching, we always remind people, let the man know that mortality is real. And what you have achieved and accessed in a very short period of time within the timeline of your life is just short of, like, I don't know, unbelievable. The magnitude of information, the magnitude of insight, the magnitude of experiences. And this is what takes place when you get to really get deep into this state of I guess people consciousness, spiritual consciousness, where you're accessing direct source information, and it's having a fundamental effect in this 3D reality. It's kind of like, it's an evidence-based sort of thing where this, just as through your own admission, speaking of things when you were younger, and then sort of the foundation of it, how you start to build on it, as a fundamental reality. It's, this is what it is. I mean, I do the same. I've been channeling for over 30 years. I have conversation, and my teachers are present in all forms. If I want them to be in a form that's more vivid, like you're looking at you right now, they're present. They're in the room right now, sitting at the table here with me. It's that type of state of palpability that comes with where you are in your own journey. But there's nothing more profound than when you can create that evidence-based stuff. And this is the type of thing that you have been on the awareness of, awakening, documenting all these types of experiences, paranormal, activity. I go down there, and I'm here in Vegas. So I just started a series a couple of months ago where I go around to each hotel, and I basically give everyone the hot spots, all the power centers, all the energetics, how the construct of the actual structures are laid out, where the energy flow is, which place not to go in, which place to go in. And then, of course, the spirits that are in the entities that are residing within that space and what they do. I mean, it's as real as the day is long, my friend. And this is, it's their world and we're living in it, or vice versa, or however, all is one is all, kumbaya. It's profound. And, I had a psychiatrist on just a while back, and she was talking about, the 1% that you're aware of. Sure. I would have to say that Jessica and I are accessing the 99% that other people are not aware of, and it's very tangible. It's like, people say, oh, well, it's not possible to develop these type of sensory perceptions. Sorry, you're wrong. It's very possible, and you just have to start with a practice of cultivation. So when you started to gather this sort of like through your own experiences, were you lent towards, when was it very clear to you that you had this direct communication with a specific teacher, or what would you describe your relationship with your channel? Is it do you call them a spirit, a teacher, a person, an entity? How would you define them?
I would say that rather than just have like one primary contact, because it started when I was really young, so you go through different communications over the process. I do recall at the age of 5 finding myself on my front porch and wondering how I got there. It was the middle of the night. I was fully dressed. And, like wearing regular clothes, not pajamas, which I recalled, going to sleep. And looking around, noticing nobody else is out there. It looked like it was like 3 a.m. And I remember looking up, and there was a spacecraft over the house. And literally a saucer ship. And so that was a strong awareness for me that, there's something else out there communicating. Remember I told you early on that I would go in my front yard, and I was like into gymnastics and like a very, physical kid, and we were doing handstands and all sorts of stuff out there. And then all of a sudden had an awareness that there was a spaceship like there, right on the front yard. and seeing different individuals going in and out, especially maybe a boy or something like that was close to my age. Or that's how they showed themselves, and then having a variety of different incidences like that. But the ones that were more cohesive was when I got into like the Edgar Allan Poe one. I mean, literally, we had a conversation. He's an interesting guy. No one really thinks about him as being spiritual, but he predicted. His stories were so accurate. Well, one in particular that he got arrested because he described a murder scene, which they thought he took part in, and the whole scenario around it. And so I've had conversations with him for, like, I think it was like a year or maybe 2 years. I was communicating with him, and of course he probably was someone else aside from just as we know him as Edgar Allan Poe, but maybe some kind of sage or of some sort prior to that. And then when I met Andronicus, that would have been probably around 2015 where I met him, and I still communicate with him. Also, he was in his world, or existence. There was also Odin was there, but I called him Rodan. So interacting with Odin, and then Odin concerned about his people on the planet, that kind of thing. So there's been a constant communication from both of them, and there's even others that were in that circle that opened up when I started to communicate with them. When I work with individuals, I talk to whoever is around them to help them find their answers. But I don't continue conversations with people's private, connections or relatives or what have you. But regarding getting back to those that are guiding me, probably Andronicus, Odin, Rodan, as I go call them, and then there was others.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a progression. It's like it literally is a timeline. Like as a child, you have friends in kindergarten, then you have friends in
Yes.
high school, then you have friends in the real world, the 9 to 5, and then you have your friends on the weekend, and I mean, it's like this progressive thing that I think people find can be problematic, because it really is a reflection of where they're at in their own journey. Really,
Yeah, well, technically they come and meet us where we're at. So for someone that's very articulate and very worldly to show up around a 5-year-old doesn't really make sense. It's not relatable. A child will be like, all right, who are you? You know what I mean? Immediately the wall goes up. Why wouldn't they send a child to me at a younger age and saying that they knew me? There was this guy that I met. He's no longer with us. He was quite a character. His name was Max Steele. And I remember we had conversations, and I said, Max, I said, I met you when you as a young boy, because I think he was related to one of the people that showed up when I was a child. And we had a discussion about it. He remembered it. And he used to talk about galactic things all the time. And and then, he also had a military background, but he was one of those unusual guys where he was still growing at the age of 60 or something. I don't know how old he was, but he grew up to about 6'10" in height, and he worked at Area 51.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You talking about out here in Nevada?
No, he lived down south. He used to have a show. He died a few years back. A lot of people followed him. And then he had that incident, but we did have a discussion that I had interacted with him as a child, but he worked at Area 51, at some point, and then he was living in I think it was the Carolinas. I don't know if it was North or South Carolina. Never been there. So we had that discussion. But yes, out your way, because out where you're living right now, there's a lot going on, isn't there?
Woo! Listen, I'm like out here in the middle of like Hillbillyville out in the dusty desert here. And let me tell you, not so long ago, probably 3 months ago, I had Dolores Cannon just chewing my ear out for days. And then chiming in was this other character, which I soon became more familiar with. I quite frankly, neither one of them I was really familiar with. And then this other guy that out of nowhere, this guy by the name of Art Bell. And so Art Bell, strangely enough, I realized I literally could throw a stone and find his place not so far in the desert from where I was. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, okay, let's get deep on this. So tell me, and I mean, he didn't allude to, he had a very clear conversation that he shouldn't have left this earth as soon as he did. I'll just put it that way. And so I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit too much. What do you want me to do with this? I'm pretty good, buddy. You and Dolores, you keep going on your way. I think we're closed for business, and it was really nice talking to you guys. But we're good. And she went hard. She went in on her whole system, and how people are running it, and it's not the way it should be. And I was just like, okay,
yeah, it sounds like her.
What do you want me to do about it? I'm not. It's not that I'm not that guy. You probably picked the wrong guy. And like months before, I get this happen all the time. When you leave the doors open, leave the lights on, someone's going to come out. And Bruce Lee turned up on his 50th anniversary of his death, as I did a little thing on that on YouTube, and it's like, dude, it's like, really? And I mean, he went deep on his curse and how he had a contract with some entities, and oh man, it was like wild. I'm just like, this is what the world that Jessica and I live in. This is the reality of how things are. I mean, it's so fascinating. I tend to more have a conversation if it's not an entity I'm familiar with, which is basically, it's not a spirit. Like, I have about 171 different immortals that I work with on a daily basis that are just, how do I define it? They're facets of the diamond of consciousness of the Tao. That's basically how they translate into information. You access it, and they're it's like being at the highest state of consciousness, and I need information on this, and poof, they turn up and like, here you go. There you go. What are you looking for? Well, you need to go to the Supreme Thunder God. No. You need to go to Guangdong. No. You need to go. And it's like the information just comes in. And so it's a really interesting sort of like, I completely relate to how you describe it, the development of these sort of like relationships, and then where you're at and what that is what you're getting for that person is the master of this information at this level of consciousness. And I find it fascinating because a lot of people sort of get in there and they get started, and then they get a little disappointed when people disappear and someone else comes in. It's like, tag, you're it.
Yeah.
Then the next one, it's like, well, it's part of your own development, right? And I explain it to them. It's like, as you raise your resonance, as you raise your frequency, as you raise the frequency from the vibration of the energy that you're communicating with, you have to hold it there. That's where it comes in. That's where they come in and they get around you and they start giving you information. Then you start validating it from, self-evidence of, holy moly, like I'm sitting here talking to someone and poof, I give them a psychic reading and they're like, you don't know me. How did you get that? I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm the master of nothing, let me tell you. And so when I'm having a conversation with someone, it's like, I lay claim to nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing. And that's where I stay. But it seems to be the most appropriate place. That present moment, you can really observe and quickly get information. From my own experience doing this as long as I have, that is the right there that seems to work. And so people get really sort of fascinated by, hang on a second, because we'll go down to the strip. My kids, I sort of teach them a lot of these type of skills, whether it's, channeling, psychic stuff, remote viewing. I started with something sort of a little benign like hypnosis. And they're, oh, yeah, wow, this is cool. And, you have fun. You go down the strip and we play family street magic day. Where you walk up to someone and go, hey, have you ever felt bliss and complete relaxation in like a fraction of a second? And they're like, no, and sleep. Oh, and their friends are like, oh. And their videotape of this is like, he's standing up, but his lights are out. What's going on here? And people get kind of like blown away by, is it really that easy? Yeah, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, everything that I've explored and what I teach people, it's that present moment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting you brought up Dolores Cannon. She was one of my teachers. I learned from her. She came to I was in this New Age center I used to go to all the time, and when they would come, I would give them a ride wherever they needed, and I was just kind of available and hung out with them a little bit, and then I decided to take the course. But the way you described her is, yeah, she's like that. She's she's either she's happy with something or not happy with something, and she's pretty direct, very direct.
Oh, she was like, there's a 5-step processes for me to connect with my consciousness, the stuff that I've handed off, the legacy of that relationship that I've built over all these years, and they're doing 3 out of the 5 steps, and I'm like, whoa, okay, what does that mean? Because then I was like, okay, how do I know you're Dolores? It's like, I'm Dolores. I'm like, really? And so I'll tell you what, put a pause on this. We'll come back and we'll have a conversation in a minute. So I started looking a little closer at other things. And because, there's shapeshifters, there's a lot of entities that come.
Yes, there are.
My teacher said that it's Dolores, but I was like, you know what? My personality likes to be like the sleuth. Like, I'm Watson. Let me check it out. What can I find? And, I come to find out that just before she passed away, there was a shift in the way that people were being trained within this method of hypnosis or whatever. And people were not going deep anymore. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, well, it's a level of consciousness and people don't have to go deep. And she's like, no. You got to go deep. You got to go right in. I'm like, okay, this somnambulistic state of like all lights out. And, people don't want to do this sort of like relationship. I don't know, because I've heard that you do a session, it's like 5 hours or something. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a serious commitment. So is it interesting? Does that sort of fall in line with her sort of messaging?
Yeah. I could tell by talking to someone whether or not that they were connecting in, people have known me to be critical about certain things, but I'm feeling that you're telling the truth, that you did see her.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this just to flatter you, because I'd be honest with you and I'd say, I don't know if I really want to say this, but in this case, I really feel that you did connect with her. And I saw her. She died right around the same time as that guy that did all the experimentation with the water. And I saw the 2 of them on a spacecraft after they died, because I wanted to check in, make sure she was all right, because I liked her. She was a tough cookie, but kind of hard to talk to at times. But I think now I understand more as I'm dealing with the public why she had like a stern way about her, but it's not a mean way, but she had to like make sure that you understand exactly what I believe. This is it. I'm not going to veer away from that. And I'm going to be very specific how it is. And, cause I met her daughter as well. And, she's not as strong. She's very nice. I liked her a lot, but, what you met, it sounds like it really feels, when I feel into it, it feels like you did communicate with her.
Well, yeah. I mean, validation, first and foremost, I go through Latsu, my teacher. And if if it ain't up to par and it's just an oasis, then I'll be like, dude, kick rocks. I got better things to do.
Yeah, anyone can be tricked. It's
there's a
anyone
lot of manipulation in the spirit world.
and they're good. They're good at it too.
Oh, they're real good.
Really good.
The funny thing is, for the OGs, any of my students, they will check that moment in time. It was about maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago when Jessica and I tuned in, and she tuned in, and the electric charge that we both got was a validation of that. And so that was like something that my students are familiar with, this type of sensory perception. They'll see it through the aura, they'll see it through the experience. Like, this is a very palpable, tangible, expansive experience that we're having. And it's just a flow. It's a fluidity that we're experiencing right now. But I'm going to say this without mentioning names, but she was not so happy with whoever took over her stuff was not honoring it to some degree. And I'm like, okay, look, what do you want me to do? Do I look like Dr. Phil? I'm not Dr. Phil. I'm not, it's like, I really appreciate, and I can have moments and share with stuff like with you. But generally speaking, it's not my what's the old expression? It's not my bridge to burn or a candle to hold. Yeah. But like, she'll find someone. I mean, the same thing, like people get all blown away. It's like Bruce Lee on his 50th anniversary literally threw a net out and was looking for anyone that will listen to him. And that's where people are like, oh my goodness, it's so strange. I didn't know it was the 50th anniversary, but I felt really motivated to want to watch his movies. And I was shy with it. That's what happens. They get out there and they get their little bullhorn and they're on their little soapbox. And if you are even slightly in tune, they will capture that. And all of a sudden, I remind people, one of my teachers always reminds us of this, all for to be mine, not yours. And then people are like, what? What do you mean they're not mine? Well, listen, you're a tuning fork. So now you have to discern and affirm what it is that's really coming through this passage vehicle. What is really going on? Where are you getting it from? And that's part of the mastery, is really, and I find that through the energetics as a Taoist, we're second to none with internal alchemy. And so then you really be able to identify, you're like, okay, I know what's going on here. I can flush it out. Because I had a pretty problematic experience with this guy by the name of Thoth. Not so good. Not so good at all. And it's funny, man. I mean, and this guy's a megalomaniac.
I have too. He's he's a pain in the what.
He's not good. I'm sorry. I was like, I
don't know if there might be two of them, and there's one that's pretty nefarious. Like he's doing some nasty things, and then there's another one that's like, hey, I didn't do this. He's using my identity. So I've had two of them show up. Can I step back for a second?
Just
for 1 second. Let's get back to Dolores Cannon. We'll finish this.
Yeah.
Dolores's daughter, from my understanding, is running everything. So she thought she loved her daughter. She was such a good mom, and her daughter adored her too. Like you could see that there was no conflict there. They worked together. The problem is there were so many people that came in and took the teaching as if it was theirs, and it became like out of control. And I believe her name is Julia. I don't think Julia has the strength to pull back the reins and say, hey, wait a minute, this is ours. And I think that's where they I'm sure Dolores is frustrated because she doesn't have the same, kind of, power that Julia doesn't have that same kind of power. Although Julia has other abilities, she just their personality wasn't as strong. And there were people that just came in and started doing things, and then I've heard of people just like abusing or using the process, violating people's subconscious, going in and trying to insert things that they shouldn't. You have to be careful. That's a soul that's sacred, right? So I'm sure that she, was frustrated over that. So I just want to validate that for you, because that's what I've seen in the past. And I didn't really reach out. I didn't stick with them because I had a different path. But I always respected Dolores's work because she was kind of a trailblazer in this area, and there was no one equal to her in what she did, and there probably won't be anyone equal to her in what she did. They'll try to replicate her. They'll try to say that they're as good as her. It's not that she was better than anyone else, but she was clearly designed to come here for this purpose and to open this up.
Yeah.
And so I
No,
just wanted to validate that for you.
no, I really appreciate that. I mean, through her own admission, through Latsu, I accepted the information, but you get in your. I like being a little defiant in personality. It's like, hey, come on now, look, I look right here. It says here, you said you'll never be channeled by anyone, and so this doesn't make sense with what you're telling me.
Right.
So,
yeah, but she wants to communicate. She'll bypass that if she wants to tell you something.
Right. That's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hang on, right here it says, all the people that know you said you'd never want to be channeled. So I don't know what. Really, give me a little bit more information. We went deep on it, and I just felt like I really appreciate what you're sharing with me, but there's not. I'm going to share it with my audience when it seems fit or appropriate, but I'm not going to go out of my way blazing a channel through to basically validate what you're talking about and effectively attempting to shuffle or shake things up. It's like that'll happen.
It's not. You should write it down. And you should share it with people and tell them that you just wanted to be a clear channel and let her say what she felt like she wanted to say. I do feel her frustration.
Yeah.
She's very frustrated. She's not angry at anyone, but kind of like that's not the direction, or, I didn't want it to be like this. But I think that's really good. And I'm going to go into another validation for you. Okay. Not that you need to be validated, but we're coming from completely different spaces. I just met you today.
Yeah.
Right. Bruce Lee came to me around 2011, 2012. And I saw him in a room. It was a white room. And we had a few conversations, and it was almost like I asked him about the dragon, because he always did these movies about this like dragon that haunted him, like that was this really big deal. And I always admired his physical abilities were phenomenal. As clearly he was in another plane of existence when he was able to do his fighting and everything. He was so quick. It was almost like, and it was just really amazing to watch, right? Plus, then he bridged the East to the West, which made him a fascinating individual, and I really liked him. And I think I read later, like what was that movie with David Carradine that he did? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the movie. I'm just lost for the name of it. It's like a walk or it's called Kung Fu.
Kung Fu. Yeah. And that was supposed to have been Bruce Lee, but it's almost like they didn't have appropriation at that time. He should have represented himself and his culture, and they took someone that was Caucasian that they thought looked Asiatic, and it was like, it would have been frustrating, but he had a really good attitude about certain things. And then what happened with his son was that untimely death as well, which was really strange. The Crow, I think, was the movie that he was in.
Yeah, he went deep. So basically, it was a contract that he had with this entity to obtain basically stardom, get all his messaging out, acquire these superpowers, because he was actually working with a Taoist priest, because this is what we train in. I teach people a bunch of crazy stuff that is beyond human framework, and it's completely doable. It's not unreal. Only thing I don't really get into is levitation, but other than that, anything else is possible. But that his admission was the entity wanted him to acquire his audience. He'll get the audience, he'll acquire it, you get the superpowers. And he's like, no, well, what do you want to do with it? Well, I want to feed from the audience. So
Right.
people that admire you, the more people that follow you, the more energy I get. And I was like, oh, crap, this is scary. And he's like, I can't do that. And he goes, well, this is the answer. So
No.
you can't do that. Guess what we're going to do? You're going to be famous, but you're going to be dead. And I'm going to take your firstborn as well, so you cannot reproduce. And I was like, oh, that's horrible, man. It's like, yeah, well, I took one for the team. It was worth me defying that. But still, the energy is still, as you would say, as Bob Monroe would say, looshing from the audience. There's a massive audience. Look at him. He literally is like this icon, idol from the grave.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not to the same degree because he sacrificed himself and his son.
He was there. He was almost like an ambassador, like I said, between the two cultures that were, China has been behind the Great Wall, and in many ways keeping themselves isolated from the Western world. And so, and then it creates all of this, like, you don't understand someone, and there's this big rift or even dislike because the cultures are so different and there's no understanding. And he broke through that. And I think in part that was something that maybe they didn't want to see happen. I'm not talking about, the good people or the good beings that are, guarding or watching over the planet, but the controllers, those that want humanity to be at war with one another and to have this dissension. But he was a very, very spiritual being, but also on some level quite a warrior, like a spiritual warrior. And because there's some really strange things in the etheric space, and some of them are creatures. They're like or from another time space or what have you. Like I tell people, like when you see in Beyond the Veil, right? And I'll say it like that. You can see dinosaurs. You can see that stuff is still existing in our space.
Yeah, I found them down. I found dinosaurs down on the Strip in Vegas.
Yes.
It's like their spirit is very strong.
Big, not just a little, like, not reptilians. These are reptilian. No, like, because those worlds are still existing simultaneously with ours. It's just that they're not intermingled with all this quantum experimentation that they're doing right now. That's where we're getting in trouble, because they're pulling their worlds into our world, and we're getting some strange things. And if they keep on going, I mean, we could have, full out, I don't know, chaos. Something really, really crazy could happen. It started to it. And I think that we do have those that are helping us. The ACIO is like one of the groups that do try to help moderate, like, oh, wait a minute, let's deal with what's going on here, but so that kind of information is evident. And like you said, if you get into that frequency, and you're already kind of open to these things, then you can experience it. And those that are still there from, beyond the veil, or had passed over, as we understand it, had died, but still exist because the soul continues to exist. Their personalities the same. And so no matter how you look at it, you don't see them like twitching or changing in and out of another like kind of shape-shifting. You see that they're continuously that way, and you kind of figure out, whether or not that is the person who was here. And also they'll have the same belief systems, or explanations, and if something wasn't resolved, they come back to try to find someone like you or I to try to correct it.
Oh, you're gonna love this one. So Elvis came to
Okay.
me. Elvis came to me. You know who you know who he's in right now? Who he's commandeered and is the incarnation. Get this. You ready? Bruno Mars.
Oh,
I take
yeah.
and digest that. I was like, really? Come on, come on, come on, Aaron. I think his middle name was Aaron. Come on, buddy. Really? And he's like, yeah. And then I started looking closely, and Bruno Mars, for the better part of his beginning of his life, was an Elvis impersonator.
Oh, that's interesting.
With Elvis. And I was like, that you can't make that stuff up. And just the charge you and I got right there, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And I was like, holy moly. And what an incredible voice. Like the guy
Yeah.
is angelic. And I mean, that was one of the amazing thing. You know, Elvis, and to his own admission, was basically done. I'm done. I need to go. I'm done. I need to go. Like any way that he could speed up the end of his life, he was doing it. And of
He
course,
was unhappy. He was very unhappy.
very, very depressed. And he was being haunted by another entity that was really controlling the way he would view his reality. And, you know, then it didn't help with all the external stuff that was going on. And, you know, he wanted to be with God, you know.
He was, you know, you do get a kind of a God feeling when you're on stage and that many people loving you and worshiping. I mean, they did literally worship you, you know, because they see you as like someone very amazing. And, you know, I've had tiny little glimpses of that when, you know, because when you give people certain realizations, they're like, wow, you know, who are you? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. You know how that is. And sometimes you have to like, well, I don't want that energy. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to like see myself as anything other than what I am, you know? Because then it kind of pushes you into another like weird ego thing. But with Elvis, Elvis went through a lot of trauma, and one of the reflections of that is that he got fractured. So you see all of these people picking up tiny bits of him to be able to impersonate him so well. He's one of the few people that have multiple people imitating them. And I'm going to tell you something. My ex-husband was one of them. And he passed in his 30s. He as soon as we were about to split up, a few years after that, he died strangely from an aneurysm. And I knew that they were using him, but he was military police. He was stationed over in Germany, and when the guys were all around, he'd get up and do his little Elvis thing, and he sounded like Elvis. It was crazy. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. When you said he's Bruno Mars, well, Mars coming from another planet, you know what I mean? So he's letting you know something that he's connected to. But yes, but I also think there's like little soul aspects of him still shattered, you know, or out there where you have all these impersonators. In Marilyn Monroe, same thing. You have like little bits and pieces of Marilyn in a few, you know, and all these people wanting to dress up and act like Marilyn, because there's a lot of stars, but those two had these imitators, right?
Yeah. No, it's funny. I had a friend of the channel on, and she was going on. She channels a lot of different spirits, and we were talking about the 27 Club. So I've had I've always been a massive fan of Janis Joplin, but it was like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and she channeled all of them. And it's like a collective. Jim Morrison. And it was interesting because I actually, you know, came across, you know, there was who was it? Kurt Cobain, same thing.
Mm-hmm. I
Same
have
thing.
too. Yep.
Amy Winehouse, same thing. 27, all of them. It's really interesting. And now for a Taoist, that's a very powerful number. There's a way more to that numerology than meets the eye. It's like a club of eternal idols, sort of like representation, always echoing in that state of just at the sort of a height of their,
Yeah, they never grow old. That they, they're. But some people see it as a sacrifice that they were able to pull energy from them, traumatize them, and take them out before their time. So there's a few different ways to look at it, but it's interesting that you bring in a positive way to look at it as them leaving at their peak. Some people don't want to be remembered as old. Look at it, the celebrities always trying to keep themselves looking young, and so some people might prefer to go out at a young age to have that forever image.
Well, I mean, these energies are feeding. Like, for example, it's kind of like, just like you were talking about, this fragmented thing where I think the problematic effects of being a light worker, an energy healer, psychic channel, is understanding that you do not have to sacrifice your constitution, your life force. A lot of people would not realize they're doing it, and in the evident result, the self-evidence is a short-lived life. Oh, they were a great healer, everything, and they're they somehow lose juice by the 60s and 70s. If they make it that far, they're dead, they're gone, because they don't learn how to master the energy and keep their life force contained and then channel direct source. And this is probably the biggest issue with any sort of like healing sort of space, is people, they don't go to the trouble. I don't want to call it trouble, but they don't go to the effort of mastering a way to cultivate. And so within Taoism, that's the fundamental. It's like, take the Jing, the essence, the constitution, then you multiply it. Most people come in, you look at it as a battery life, right? So they have this representation, your genetic disposition, your heretic, sort of the history of your gene pool will be representative on where you come in the game. So you get born into this world, and out of 100% battery, you're at 70%. As a Taoist, that's fine, because we can go and bring your battery up to 100% through internal alchemy cultivation, and then from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 10,000, and then you enrich the cell, the 50 trillion cells you have in this physical flesh, and you master that energy appropriately any way you want, and then you tap into direct source, so you're not literally, sucking from the force of energy that keeps you breathing, keeps you alive, keeps you in this, very short-lived existence while you're leveling up your consciousness. People just don't realize they're doing. They don't realize they're doing it. It's like, oh, I just had a long day, I'm tired. Or I meet a lot of channelers that are like, I can only do so much. Sorry, I'm done for today. I can't talk anymore. And it's like, it's problematic if you don't understand how to really nurture your life force. Realize I can tap into my teachers at any point and do channels and healings of group healings of thousands of people at a time. And I feel more charged at the end than anything, because I'm not using my energy. I'm using the Tao. And a lot of people get caught up in it. And maybe it's the lack of, the separation of personality and direct source. And so you don't become one with all things. You aren't this present moment. There's no title, place, person, or thing. It's just now. And people just get caught up in the identity politics of, I'm the guru, I'm the next Messiah, right. Moses, Jesus, whatever it is. And that can be problematic, because ultimately you burn out very quickly. And I think that's one of the big things that I think in this space that we're in, that we share in, it's really important to cultivate that as best as to whatever degree you need to be to realize that you don't have to ever, if you come out of a session or you come out of an interaction with another energy, you should be more charged, not drained. And if you are, then look at that, because I'm referencing the loosh from Bob Monroe. It's kind of like it's problematic. So you look at someone like Charlie Sheen, who is a personality who has just been on a rip and a tear. That guy had more jing. He had jing for like 1 million people. And so his constitution was super strong. He came in, let all these entities feed from him, went trails blazing for decades, and then hit a wall, because that energy was literally feeding on anything and everyone around him. So the more critics that he had, the more people that he had as admirers, fans, haters, whatever, it was feeding from all of it. And it's like, you just can't make this stuff up. And like, he was literally, he seemed like he was getting stronger and stronger from year to year. And then at a certain point, he threw in the towel and we were done. And then he's just a shell of a human being, because he's like burnt out everything that exists. What are your thoughts on that sort of structure of how you see things? Is that similar or make sense to you?
Yeah, no, I'm actually glad that you brought it up, because I've been around many people that were gifted. When I first started doing this, I was in fairs, and there would be like, 20 psychics sitting in a room, and it's crazy energy. But you see these people with serious health issues, very, very serious health issues, mediums in particular. They go into those places and then they bring stuff back. They don't know how to clear it. And it really is something that really needs to be taught and assisted, because, you can't fully function. And then there's that crash and burn. And even like, what's his name? I don't know. I just I can't think right now, but no, it's a perfect example of something that's really, really important, but nobody talks about it in the field. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because there is this energy exchange that you have, and there's people.
John Edwards?
No, not John Edwards. The guy that Edgar Casey, like, people will come and they would just pull from him. And it's not just entities, it's just human need. They're not well, they have issues. And there's certain people that I've talked to, and I can feel this tug, wanting to grab a hold of my, because they're reaching for something, right? They should go to the God source, but they don't realize it, but they naturally do that. But they do that with celebrities, like you said, because there's certain people have other beings in them, and then they are pulling for them or getting from something from them. They're emotionally charged. They're releasing their energy, then they're unleashing it from them. That celebrity's pulling it from the audience. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's going on. But yes, the energy field is vitally important. If you don't take care of yourself, if you're not careful in what you do, there were times when I've had done like multiple sessions, one after another. And then there were times where I really felt like a lot of energy was being drained from me. So you have to identify where that's happening. And I don't know what your process is. It sounds very interesting. Yeah. And maybe it's something that would be sustaining or something worth teaching to people. Yeah. It is very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ancient Taoist stuff. I mean, we're the big dogs in this area. A lot of people, we got it down. We've been using it for thousands of years, and it's like jumping on. Millions of people have used this before us. It's like, why recreate the wheel? Right. Use it appropriately. I mean, I get down to separating electric from magnetic energies and then moving them together and cultivating them, transmitting them any way you want, doing all sorts of crazy physical healings, mental, emotional stuff. And I feel amazing at the end. I could go through 1,000 people in a day, and I feel more charged by the end of the day than I did when I first got up. That is very critical to understanding whether you are really tapping in. And when you start with a seed, and I have these people are like, well, that's not possible. You have to use, I mean, that's the first mistake. And it's like talking from this absolute truth. And there is no such thing as an absolute. You need to understand it's only valuable to you. So if you can really enter into understanding how to access your consciousness, anything is possible. So then you have to frame out an understanding. And that's why I like to get the energetics really deep within the neurology, deep within the physical tissue. And that architecture needs to be cultivated, needs to be as palpable as you feel your hand, and you need to be able to call on it at will. And it's not about, being fearful of protecting yourself, because you are me, I am you. It's understanding that you don't ever have to tap into your life force to obtain access. And so a lot of people are still, they get this enlightened glimpse of something, and they go off for the race. I've got it. I'm good. Okay. And they crash and burn, as always. They crash and burn, and it's not because they just burn their own life force out instead of realizing they don't have to. And it's not about creating fear. It's about realizing that, one of the things I had to do as a priest was, like, at the end of the training, you take a bottle of alcohol, i.e. it's normally vodka, right? Sealed bottle of vodka. And you have to remove the alcohol out of the bottle and place it in another bottle. And then after you do that, and you're sure of yourself, you have to pop the cap and drink it in 60 seconds. And if you didn't do what you thought you did, and it was a figment of your imagination, you are going to have a bad day. And so part of it is really being able to sink your teeth into all the subtleties, the different layers of energy and how they present themselves, because this is energy. This is energy. This is energy. The mic is energy. So everything has its own energy, vibration, frequency, and resonance. And if you can sink your teeth in and hold that line, that resonance, then you can obtain it. It's yours. So people tend to just get all, oh, I got it. I felt the energy. Yeah, it's amazing. And I get a lot of that. And I'm not going to dismiss that anyone can access anything at will, because I literally accessed stuff that I've been mastered at for 30 years ago. Like first go, boom. And I'm not going to dismiss that you listen to Jessica and I, and guess what? You can literally access that consciousness. I've come across people that have spent years cultivating, and literally I've come across people that wake up one day and they've got superpowers like nobody's business. And it's just part of who they are, remembering who they are and where they're at. And so, anything is possible. I don't dismiss it. But if you're still in the camp of you're not sure if anything's possible and you need a starting point, I highly recommend that you seek out a mastered processes to help ascertain where it is you're at on that spectrum, and develop a skill so that it can be as strong as, one of the superpowers you get into. Whether you get, I got a clairvoyant sense and I can read people's auras and all that kind of stuff. That's one aspect. Within Taoism, we do all of them. So that means all your superpowers become, so problematic is where people learn, right? They use their senses, and some people are people that are visual. Some people are audible. Some people are, what do you call it? They hear, they speak, whatever it is. They have to.
Some people can smell too. They can smell what's going on around them. Or taste it, And
you have to realize where you're at in the starting point, which is your strongest superpower, and then level up all the rest of them, because you can. There's a system. We have a system to do that. You equalize all your sensory perception, then you add it on. So, generally speaking, it comes in the form of probably visual and audible, and then, the feeling is like the third category for most people. And then it can be mixed around, and, I can instantly look at someone and know which one they're starting out at and which one we have to cultivate and bring up to par on the same level, and balance it out so that when you're taking in everything, it's all at the same level. It's not one's excess, one's deficient, and then you have this asymmetry instead of a sort of a symmetrical sort of like processes with all your senses. So, I think that a lot of people get excited, and I love that. Yeah, I was excited. I'm still excited. Every day is like the first day I've experienced this stuff. I remember I got, all jokes aside, and some people cringe when I say this. My first hit of the spiritual crack pipe was
Yes.
like 30 years ago, was witnessing a physical healing, and
Yeah.
I got to see gangrenous flesh go back to pink in color in 40 minutes. And so,
That's cool. Yeah.
but do I know it's possible? I've seen it all. I've seen bones fuse in front of my very eyes. I've seen tumors disappear. You name it, I've seen it. It's just like it. I am not. I don't have an expectation or an assumption. How people sort of call about the laws of assumption. It just is my reality, and it's a state of resonance. That's all it is. And when you get to that state of resonance, I don't know what. Hang on. Come on. What is going on here? Oops. Come on, guys. Come on. Decline. My apologies.
It's okay.
But what I was saying is, it's like you get to that state of resonance, and it's like it's there. I mean, when I first got it, I was like, oh wow, that tissue flesh. And then I got obsessed with popping like people's sebaceous cysts. So they'd have like what they'd call some type of like cyst or tumor, and I'd raise it up to the top of the skin, and I'd watch the skin open up, and then poof, like a weasel.
Oh, that's wild.
And it was wild. It got to a point where this one woman had this big cyst, which looked like the size of a melon on her breast because she was breastfeeding. Must have got a duct block or something. This thing, we both watched this. This is crazy. She watched it, I watched it. It's like it rose up to the top, it expanded, it opened up, a gallon of pus poured out into the sink in front of us, and then it sealed back up before my very eyes. And I was like, who needs drugs at this point?
Wow.
you don't need drugs. And when you tap into that, I ain't playing. This really happened. And she's like, just to make sure. It's like, holy moly, he's not lying. He ain't lying. No, I'm not. Because this is the kind of stuff that I experience. And this is accessible to anybody. But you have to what do I attribute this to? I've got to be honest. Being childlike in my nature. Accepting everything at face value.
Yeah, you can't be conscious mind can't be in the way of trying to reason it out and telling you that logically it can't happen. That's why children stop using their psychic abilities, because they've been told this is fantasy. And just to get past a person who's telling me that I can't see this because, or what I'm seeing right now is just fantasy. I don't want to go there anymore, and not really opening up to the potential of that it's another type of reality. And so that they create a wall or a parameter, whereas you allow yourself to go beyond that and see the unlimited possibilities. And so what you're talking about, which I understand, is the working with the chi energy, right? Because you're a qigong master, or are you?
They call me a master because I'm an ordained priest in two lineages of Taoism. So we go deep into all the ancient rituals. So we go deep into the magic, star stepping, all that kind of stuff. I teach people all that on top of teaching people a very mastered skill that is revealed to very few, which is Nidan, which is internal alchemy, Nigong, which is the internal power that you cultivate. And it's the relationship that you have, which would be equivalent to what we call the infinite Wuji body, which is, in my opinion, the Pepsi taste test, the Pepsi challenge, it polarizes Kundalini. And that's kind of like where we're at. So, you open up the pathway, some very modest sort of offerings to cultivation practices that have been watered down would be the microcosmic orbit that a lot of people have had exposure to on the West. It's a really benign sort of what we call rice bowl version of training, but it starts there, right? And so for us, we get deep into activating the universe. And once you turn that universe on, you are the plutonium dump site of energy. And then you start cultivating and molding the inner alchemy. So the three Dantians are the three major energy centers. This is the sun, the earth, the moon, and then you go deep into the chambers in each dantian, which there's 81 chambers in each dantian. You go deep into activating all those, and you reveal what we call the sacred infinite flower, and that charges up all types of stuff. That little charge you got there, you're like, oh, I resonate with that, because it's just the stuff that's real. I keep telling people, it's like, I can say anything to you. You will know what is bullshit and what is real, and it will come out through your body language. You will visibly, you will feel it. And this is what I keep telling people: it's like, forget about what you're reading in a book, forget all that nonsense. You will be gravitated to it. This truth teller right here is going to give you everything you need. It's going to show you and provide you what is necessary. You'll either be contracting or expanding. And, you know, the charge you're getting right now, it's like, we're expanding together, my friend.
Yeah, I agree, because you can tell, you know, I always say, was it the bullshit meter? You know, you can tell when someone's going off on something. But no, what you're talking about is in I think it's fantastic that you've manifested healing, because like I said, when I was young and I started seeing things, I didn't really understand the purpose for it. It didn't seem to have a purpose. Once you identify the ability having a purpose, then you can go on from there. And so in your situation, you developed and learned, and you probably returned back to an experience that you had in a previous life or lives, multiple lives. Tuning into also, let's keep in mind that some of these methodologies or training was a natural teaching that everyone would learn in these communities prior to the flood. I would say it's pre-flood knowledge, right? You know, in our you know, ancient civilization history. And so these are the things that work, and when people want to do something spiritual, and then a lot of people try, you know, they go to different modalities. They have this different ones. I mean, so the East has one, and so I've talked to people like, you know, we talk about the Wiccans, you know, people that remember herbalism and all that stuff. And I have memory of being in a situation like that, where, you know, you're using herbs and things from the earth, and recognizing that the earth is alive, and that you can communicate with it. So all of these ancient cultures, that's why people, you know, have a respect for the indigenous people. Well, you lived in Australia, so you got the Aborigines, the Native American here, the ones down in the South America, you know, and all the different types of these or original cultures. And the Italians even have it, you know, like the early Etruscans were like these nomadic people that knew how to do certain things, and they were not just warriors, you know. So and then you have this culture being carried down, but it was purposeful. It was to help the tribe. It was to help the group. You have someone that came in, that the ones that could see, that would make sure everyone was safe. You know, they could feel the danger coming in the way animals can feel. They can feel the danger. They can feel the weather changes. All of this stuff we were supposed to naturally do. This is not witchcraft. This is not evil. This is not anything bad. And what you're doing, the natural healing, manifesting. How would they survive? They were in rugged terrain. They were with like dinosaurs. They were with you know, these big cats, or, you know, some kind of a predatory group or another tribe coming over. You'd have to know how to protect yourself, create that field. I mean, some of these guys that are so powerful, but they're tiny, they're small in stature, but they know how to put up that energy field, which is very, very powerful. And they can push someone with barely using their muscles, right?
That's what I teach people. You know, it's like when someone puts their hands on you, they're mine, because that tension, I use my energy and slide into their fascia like liquid mercury, and all of a sudden I become the puppet master. Now, I don't really need to have someone touch me to do that, but it's certainly problematic for people that their eyes open real wide when they do that, and they're like, you're standing there. I'd be like, literally someone would grab my forearm and I'd do this, and they'd start moving in the opposite direction because
Mhm.
going into their energy. You're commandeering their energy, and the more tense they get, the easier it is.
Right.
It
Because
will.
they become rigid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that's part of the fundamental understanding of how the energy works and how you can truly just like create miracles, and which what most people consider just superhuman. And it's an indigenous ancient practice that so many people are have lost sight of. For Taoists, it's problematic because over the centuries, especially in the last 100 years, there's been megalomaniacs that have ruled, especially the Chinese culture, and they've
Yeah.
they've murdered most of us. And within Chinese history, the emperors would always have their Taoist advisor, because we'd tap into all the magic and basically be able to be the muse and get all the information and hand it to them from the stars, because our relationship is with the universe. So very deep into star stepping magic and the constellations was a huge component within Taoist cultivation. And that started thousands of years ago with the Yellow Emperor, with his direct communication with the universe. And then
The yellow dragon.
right. And well,
Yeah.
it's funny you say the yellow dragon, because he rode down on a celestial yellow dragon from the sky,
Right.
entering the earth. And then there was a creation of Chinese culture. Even today, as you know it, all internal alchemy practices, Chinese medicine was derived from his connection with the universe, and then it was transcribed into what you know as Chinese culture today. So that has been going on for a long time, well beyond what is on the timeline of the progression of different generations of Chinese language, from Mandarin back to Cantonese to other derivatives of that, and right back to the original, conception of a communication, which was pictographs and oracle bone reading, was sort of where it first started. We
Hmm.
need to log this. We need to create something as a log for evidence-based log. So, I mean, all this stuff is just amazing to me. And I tap into my teachers and have conversations. I just finished. Have you ever heard of the Tao Te Ching? Have you heard of that?
Hmm. Yeah.
I just finished transcribing the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu, and it's I was just looking at the finished copy. And basically, what people don't understand is the Tao Te Ching is a magical register. For a Taoist, that's a very deep understanding. Each verse is an incantation. Each verse has levels to it, anywhere from 9 to 81 levels, and it has a frequency that is attuned to that incantation. And people are like, why does that make sense to me? I've never heard this before, and it's blowing my mind, because that's what this is about. This is part of the magic. And you go through the ritual. It's in English, it's also in Mandarin and in Pinyin. So you can either get a little closer to the nature of it by singing it through the pronunciation and the tonality of the Pinyin, or you can sing it in English, and your mind's going to be blown, because you just put your eyes on this stuff and go, I'm as high as a kite. I have no idea why the words are coming off the page, spinning around me and dropping down into my heart center. I'm there. That's the magic of the Tao Te Ching. But I transcribed that from Lao Tzu. I sat down and transcribed it. So there are many variables, translations, blah, 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 blah. It's bloody blah, 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 because most of them are manipulated by man. And when you read a text that sort of insinuates that then it needs to be punishment and suffering from a higher state of consciousness,
Yeah.
it's problematic, and you should potentially pause for a minute and take a closer look at what you're digesting and you believe is real direct source, because I can promise you, and Jessica will validate that too, that that's not coming from a higher state of consciousness. And you'll see it. You'll be like, oh, it didn't resonate with me for some reason. Yeah, because it wasn't coming from a high consciousness state. It was coming from
Yeah.
some low watt information that wants to manipulate you and how you see things. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I kind of
There's
read.
a few different things. I just I'm gonna the point of spirituality in China and some of these different regions where communism came in, and communism seems to come from some kind of weird source because they tried to crush that spiritual aspect of humanity, and mostly because they knew that's where the power center was, and in order to completely control everyone they needed to diminish any spiritual practice that could enhance and open an individual up to that superpowers that you were talking about. They didn't want any competition. They knew it was something. Otherwise they wouldn't have fought so hard to diminish it. They wouldn't have gone after the Tibetan monks. They wouldn't have, done all these different things. And I have a memory, a past life memory of being with the Tibetan monks and um, racing to get to them on time before they got murdered, and seeing them all murdered and having this horrible guilt for thousands of years that I didn't get to them soon enough. That type of, recall, and realizing that there's a reason they were afraid of humanity having this open, because each individual opens up in their own way. They're like the lotus flower, right? It just chakras line up and they open up, and it's just a beautiful thing. And people, now, like I see on YouTube, they try to imitate another person. When they do it the right way, they come into their own, and they flourish. They might have something that nobody else has, but they'll never find that if they're imitating others. They block that creativity. But getting back to what you said in the yellow dragon, I've communicated with the yellow dragon before. He's pretty cool. He's really, really amazing, and he has a very, very benevolent energy. I was curious, first of all, if you had spoken to him, and then I'm going to say something else before I'll finish up what my thought is. Lao Tzu has showed up probably every like 4 years or so. Someone shows up, maybe 3 or 4 years. Someone shows up with a strong Lao Tzu energy. So I don't know what he wants from me, but he shows up, and like someone like you who's like a representative. And I had this other guy that I used to do meditation classes with, and we used to use his facility. He was really connected to Lao Tzu as well. And then, whatever it was would happen. We did some work together, and then there was a separation. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And also, have you communicated with the yellow dragon?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the yellow dragon's an interesting energy in relation to its connection with the yellow emperor too, because there's like this sort of
Well, when I say the yellow dragon, I mean the yellow emperor.
right.
Kind
Oh
of
yeah,
like, as because they were like this to me, like seemed
yeah,
one and the same.
yeah. I mean that. I mean, you literally took the words out of my. I was going to say there. It's another facet or expansion of the yellow emperor's energy. And yes, I mean, I'm in direct communication with him on a daily basis. He's one of my teachers. He started me out on alchemy 30 years ago. It was like a switch on. When I was introduced to him, it literally was like this incredible switch. I broke like 3 captain chairs, and he revealed himself sitting on top of this waterfall of gold liquid. And then he just presented himself, and then of course then I started my relationship with Lao Tzu, and that was like basically a laser beam of divine light surging through my body, and everyone in that space got out their marshmallows and sticks and started like cooking their marshmallows around the fireplace because I was transmitting so much energy. It's crazy. And when I channel him, it's like a visceral thing that people are. I mean, I'm always channeling him. Pretty much most of the words coming out of my mouth, other than the smarty pants ones, are coming from him. But when I channel him, like as a let's have a
Yeah.
conversation, and people want to experience it, it's a visceral thing where people are like, "Holy moly, what is going on here? This is some digital thing that I'm feeling it from the other side of the world through the screen. It's crazy." And I mean, that's just channeling. And when we do it, Jessica and I know what it's like. It's like it's an embodiment of these things. And that's why it's always good to really refine your connection with the communication of information or where you're getting it from, because that can be problematic if you're, a little wordsmithing and trickery. You become a vessel of not such high resonance or frequency that will generally derail you to some degree. So yes, the Yellow Emperor, I've direct communication with an incredible being in relation to the creation of things, and how he had such such an intimate relationship with the whispers of the universe, and that's how he was able to generate the things that are reflected in the Chinese culture. He did have a mentor, the Jade Emperor, Jade Emperor comes in a celestial form of the Jade Purity, which has very separate energies, even though it's another higher resonance of the Jade Emperor. It's another energy. And so he was mentored, the Yellow Emperor, by Jade Emperor and Jade Purity, and going deeper into the information. And Latsu, he wants to sit down and talk. I just want to talk. Come on, girlfriend. What about it? He's coming up. He's coming through, and it's up to you.
What does he want from me? What does he want?
Well, it's quite simple what he wants.
Just giving you a hard time. No, I mean, it is kind of weird. It's what there's certain beings that show up, right, and they're like pretty straightforward. This is they're going to say something, and then that's it. Lao Tzu, he'll say something, and he's hanging around over here for a while, and it's like, but he's almost like nudging me, like prodding me in a way. Like, I don't know if he's I don't know. It's kind of, I won't say mischief, but sort of like he has this.
Oh, I was just going to say, you've had a past incarnation. I mean, not that I need to tell you this, but this could resonate with you, because we come up in all different facets. You are Kuan Yin in a past life. And so that's a real one to digest. It's like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah. I never really thought of myself as Kuan Yin, but
it's something to resonate with, sit with that, because it's a tough one, because a lot of my students, and I'm right up there in the front, guys. I came from, literally, before I went on my path as a priest and immersed myself in Taoism, I was a bodybuilder and a powerlifter. You want to talk about turning a very dramatic, with no set belief system of any high levels of consciousness, other than I went from picking up things and crushing them and breaking them to going, there's a voice inside me telling me, go and check out meditation. And I'm like, what the hell? Yeah. I crush things. I pick them up, I squeeze them, I crush them. What is this? This, to me, in those days when I went on that path, Hare Krishna and the Dalai Lama. I mean, what are you going to get out of this? I'm not that guy. I'm not that, in definition, sit quietly and still your mind. I didn't think I was. And then I sat down one day when pursuing meditation, and this little Asian woman, she was doing a free workshop in a local rec center. She's some grandmaster or something. I was like, oh, let me check it out. I'm this big gorilla. I am, basically, I look like an overgrown ape. And so I'm sitting there with a half a dozen misfits, looking around this space in some rec center that was out in some ghetto, hearing sounds and just noise on the outside. It was like there's no way there was a stillness going on there. And I'm sitting down attempting to do a lotus position, hunching over. My back is killing me. And this little woman's like, now I want you to just listen to my voice. And when you listen to my voice, everything will fall away. And in that same second, I'm just laughing, going, there's an ambulance outside. People are screaming. There's dogs barking. It's not going to happen. And literally, when she said that, the next phase was this. And I went, what the? Everything disappeared. I was like, holy shit. And it was just silence. I'm like, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. And I'm like, dead silence. And my eyes are open. I'm not in a lotus position, calling in the guides or doing whatever. And I'm like, I am onto something. I am addicted, whatever this is, instantaneously. And that was like, yeah, I guess that's stillness. I don't know. But it just turned into being able to be multifaceted. And that's why Qigong is so powerful too, because you can literally operate in all dimensions at once. So I can do the party trick where you could see my personality. And you're like, oh, this guy's not priest. He looks like some jokester, probably the leftovers of the extras on Goodfellas or something. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. But in actuality, it's just having a laugh here. But it's like I'm operating in a different dimension. It's like a sleight of hand, because it really is within this stuff where, look over here, but I'm over there. I'm not even here. And I like the closest thing I could get to realizing that was the only contributing factor that I can think of in the 80s was Oprah. And she had a talk show and she's like, oh, you wouldn't believe who I got here today. I've got this guest. His name is Deepak Chopra. And everyone's like, hey, he's sitting there. And then she's like, so Deepak, so great to have you here. And he's like, I'm so happy to. Well, no, he didn't say I was happy to be. He was like, my body's here, but I'm not. And she went, we'll be right back after this commercial break. People are not wrapping their mind around that. That is like, whoa. And I mean, she did have a reputation of bringing a lot of spiritual people to the awakening. But the reality was in the 80s, even with the merging of East to West, and Bruce Lee coming in the 70s and using that word consciousness, and the Beatles dropping a bunch of LSD back in the 60s, writing all their music, and
and the Hare Krishna stuff, and even Steve Jobs was a Hare Krishna follower,
right? All that kind of stuff couldn't wrap people. The regular people that were watching Oprah would not even understand what the hell that meant. And if anything, it created conflict. It's like, what is going on here? And so, that was an entry level. And then, of course, I went straight into the healings. And, you've heard the story. It's about
when something becomes very real to you, you can't shake it. You can try to ignore it. You can try to drink it away. You can try to, smoke it away. You can try to just create distractions or go, off on a bender in some way or another to get. So I've known people to do stuff like that. And I never did that because, I mean, for me, it was always weird from the beginning. I didn't know it was weird. I just, what other people think is weird was normal for me, growing up. But for people that had that kind of awakening, they were like, well, what do I do with this? And everyone's going to think I'm crazy. And they get like, I won't say fear, but they were like, this is out of my mental capacity to take this into make any type of sense out of it. And even when we talk about super soldiers or some of the things where, you're plucked out of time, you brought somewhere for 20 years or so, and you're going through this whole military experience, and then you're brought back in time. Nobody notices that you're gone. How in the world do they do that? But yet they know they have memories, full-blown memories of having these experiences, or sometimes they don't have memories, but they know something happened. So, and it's that part when they get to that point, some people are willing to go with it, to explore it. Some people get scared, like, because it makes them feel like they're in another category of not well, like like are you really you going through some kind of episode or something like that? They're afraid, or they start to open up to a family member and they're like, yeah, are you okay? Or now I've had people contact me in their car and they're like, I have to talk to you. My husband doesn't understand this, but I hope you don't mind. I'm talking to you in my car. that happens so many times. But I'm not there to I'm not there to judge anyone, and you're not there to judge anyone. It's just that be at that point where you can, explore that and not go into the place where you're convincing yourself that you're having this spiritual experience, but you're thinking that you're not well, and it's not necessarily the case.
Oh no! I mean, 30 years ago, people would come to me with a diagnosis of a psychotic episode, and they wanted an exorcism, which I specialize in. It's like an exorcism. Okay, cool. Understand that today, when people have these so-called episodes, they don't go looking for an exorcism. They go, I'm channeling my new found friend, and I'm a channeler, I'm a medium, I'm a healer. I think it's awesome. But, there are degrees of lower watt frequency that comes from, a once, just like we said, you resonate at a certain level. And if you keep throwing the chum out into the water, those entities will come and find you if you want to romance a certain type of energy. So
there's a lower a lower grade. They can give you power, but they can also throw chaos into your life. I mean, just like, or even you stop remembering what's happening. You literally are leaving your body and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that. Yeah, that's more of a dangerous situation. But the people that have like a psychic experience, have like weird dreams, have memory recalls, they don't know where it came from. More in a subtle sense, that's what I'm talking about, where it's as it becomes more mainstream, then people can open up, because in a lot of the tribal settings, these are normal conversations. But in our society, it's on the fringe.
yeah. I mean, this is part of their normal reality. Spirit is essential. It's like, it's all part and parcel, the big picture, all of it. There's no exceptions. And that's a cultural thing. Like you said, I mean, even the blending of the East to West, still decades later, we're still having, this, evolution, epiphany, realization that we are all one is all is one. And with that, people are, go through that cyclical spirituality, atheism, religion, and then you go, you keep going around and around and around. Well, we're in the spiritual evolution, revolution, whatever it is. And, quite frankly, it's like a much more deeper understanding of how people are being separated from themselves and they're, the materialist within. And I'm not talking about the virtue signaling, drop all your possessions, anything you own,
no,
off your back. I'm talking about being separated from your spirit, from your soul, from the oneness, realizing that you are one by identifying that you are separate, that you are the identity, that you look in the mirror as your flesh and blood as a representation, that is you. That is not you. That is a vehicle that gives you the accessibility for this state of journey in this world. But it's not you. You are all things. And that means that you are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And so that's where I think people get caught up in it and they get fearful. And, one of my teachers, Jed Emperor, always say, when you believe you're not of this body, what can harm you? Not a thing. Nada, caputo, finito. Finito, which I think I'm getting the hook. It's like the hook, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how we're going with time. Are we all right with time right now, or are we?
Yeah, it's getting close to 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay, I've been given the warning. You know what time he walked in the door and said, "You're going to be made," and he goes, "Oh shit!" And then all of a sudden, you know what happens? It's like and he goes, "Oh shit!" Bam! Yeah, I was like, I don't want to get whacked.
You don't want to get whacked.
No, I don't. No whack it today. But
no.
This has been an absolute pleasure today, having you here on the podcast and just sharing this incredible conversation with just a mastered, amazing being like yourself. I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to share it with us. And I'm already giving you an invitation to come back, and I want to spend more time, because the audience needs to understand how deep Jessica's insight into this space is. It's deep, man. We haven't even touched on very much at all today. This is coffee table talk. This is kind of rec room talk. We haven't really got into the real mastery. So I would love to have you back on the channel. I want to put all your social media, everything under this podcast. I want people to come out and find you. And what are some of the things that they're going to find? Do you offer one-on-one training? What is it that how you normally interact with people?
I haven't done any workshops. I've been, feeling like I'm not able to do that just at this point because of time constraints and working with the ACIO. We find that, I have to be very available anytime that there's something happening planetarily, because it is military operations, essentially. So, but I do one-on-one with individuals that contact me. I've kept my fees very minimal because I want people who can't afford things, I don't want to be out of reach. So I try to keep it fairly simple. It hasn't changed in about 20 years. It gets around the same price. So I love people. I like to meet people. And there's only so many hours in the day. So people connect with me, and then we can schedule something. But other than that, we have our YouTube channel. I have radio of all the shows that I do is just running constantly on AndronETalks Radio. We have the ACIO official.org. And that is where we have all our super soldier information about advanced contact intelligence organization or alien contact intelligence organization, in an overview of some of the challenges that we're having with organizations and corporations that are very, very, very advanced, manipulating our reality and doing different things. So we try to keep people on board. And then, of course, we go to some of the other social medias. Like we also have a site, AndronETalksNews.com. And we also then have our YouTube channel, as well as my personal site is readingsbyarael.com. So I think I sent some of that stuff to you already. We're also on Odyssey and Rumble and some of those whatever social media. Not really big on Facebook, but you'll find me in other places. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have the audience go out, my students, all the people that follow this channel. I'm going to go out and check all the offerings that Jessica has. And one more question, my friend. What is your definition of consciousness?
Consciousness, I don't know if you can define it, because it's a progressive process in awareness of who you are. Like you say, that kind of drop of water in a ocean of information, interconnectivity to other humanity and universal existence. The universe is very vast, but we have multiverses. So that we are all interconnected in much of this, and so consciousness is helping us to scale to experience the various levels of that experience in communication.
Love it. I've never got the same answer from anybody. I love it.
Everyone has their own perspective, I guess.
Absolutely. And like I tell people, there's a million ways up the mountain. There's no right or wrong way. It's just like find your groove and groove.
Right. So, I think that's what we agree. We have a lot in agreement and understanding. And I think when you start to step out of, or you're here, you're present, but have an awareness of your existence, and then going into all these different spaces, you start to see life differently. You start to see differences in culture or race or anything like that that really doesn't exist. It's yeah, sure, there's personalities and things that you're going around, but for the most part, you see this divine spark of everything, and also you see these others that are challenging that, and it's quite an interplay. So that in that sense, I could appreciate where you're at, because you're there. I don't have to try to help and guide you to understand that, so it makes it an easier conversation, so we could just talk and not have to explain anything in depth, right?
Exactly. And so, again, I want to thank you for coming on the channel and sharing and spending time with myself and the audience. I'm very grateful. And I look forward to you coming back at some point in the future. And hopefully that's a yes. I don't know. I might get whacked
Yeah.
up.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I'm spiritually going to walk upstairs to my altar and get whacked on the way upstairs. Maybe I don't know.
What's the matter for you?
What are you? What's the matter? What are you talking about? Oh my goodness! I love it. I love it. I really appreciate you. I really enjoyed you spending time today. I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for sharing and bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for spending their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.